Hey, gearheads, and welcome on into Shifting Gears Live, number 160, here on Sunday, March 5th, 2023. I'm Alan Bailey, and before we talk about everything that happened out in Sin City, make sure you smash that subscribe button to stay up to date on the latest videos, and you can log on to AmericanRacingNetwork.com for the latest motorsports news. ARN, the Motorsports Authority. Had a little bit of a snafu with our live earlier. We tried to do this about half an hour ago, and we had some issues with YouTube, so we think we have resolved that. We think we're all good now. So let's talk about what we just saw out there in Vegas. William Byron getting the victory out in the Pennzoil 400. I had to think about it for a second. Third race of the 2023 season, leading the Hendrick 1-2-3 finish out there. Kyle Larson coming home second in his number 5 Hendrick Chevy. Alex Bowman coming home third. You had Bubba Wallace come home fourth, leading the charge for Toyota with Christopher Bell fifth. Austin Cindric, the highest finishing Ford, finishing sixth, with Martin Truex Jr. seventh, Justin Haley eighth, ninth we had Kevin Harvick, 10th we had Daniel Suarez. So we'll go through the running order a little bit later on, but I really want to talk about Chase Elliott to start everything off, because I know that's what you guys want to talk about. Honestly, looking at it, Chase, in case you didn't hear, he does have a broken tibia in his leg. He did have surgery on Friday night. This injury occurred Friday midday-ish. A few hours later, Friday night, he did have a 3-hour surgery in order to correct this, and then we found out all within the same day that it was going to be Josh Berry, the junior motorsports driver, who was going to be taking over the 9 car this weekend out at Las Vegas. This, I don't want to say is the story of the weekend, but when NASCAR's most popular driver, frankly, is snowboarding in the middle of the season, breaks his leg, and goes down for presumably most of the season, this is where we're going to end up. Where, yeah, should he have been snowboarding? Listen, we heard comments from Kyle Busch over the weekend saying, yes, drivers need to have a life. They need to do something to blow off stress. I'm all for that. I highly agree with that. However, I don't think it was wise for Chase to go out there and snowboard in the middle of right at the beginning of the season. Like, that's not a great idea. That's not a great look. Because realistically, he's going to be out of the car for at least 3 months, realistically. And I know people are saying, well, how do you know that? You're not a doctor. No, I'm not a doctor. But guess what? Doctors I've talked to tell me that it takes weeks, at least 6 weeks, for him to recover. Just the wound itself, it's going to take him to recover from that. So we're looking at roughly at least 6 weeks for that wound to heal, which is better part of a month and a half, which means more than likely, looking at the schedule, he will miss. More than likely, he will miss Phoenix next week, Atlanta, Circuit of the Americas, Richmond, the Bristol Dirt Race, Martinsville, and probably Talladega late April, realistically. Those are the next 7 races. That's just realistic. You have to look at it that way. Realistically, he's probably going to be out for 3 full months. You know, it is March 5th right now, so let's just put him back in early May. Where does that put him? The first race in May? Kansas on May 7th. You have, actually, now I'm sitting here trying to do math because I'm frazzled. You put him 3 months out, realistically, June 4th, Worldwide Technology Raceway. You'll have Sonoma on June 11th. Hello, Robert, in the chat. Thank you for joining us for tonight's show. I know we're a little bit late. We had some issues with YouTube, with our live having some issues and coming offline. It was interesting, let's just say. Very interesting, but we're up live now. Hope that you guys are having some fun tonight. Hope that you guys enjoyed the race out there today. But realistically, we're looking at June-ish. And throughout the month of June, Worldwide Technology Raceway, then Sonoma, then an off week, then Nashville, then the Chicago Street Course on July 2nd. Like, road courses are going to be tough for him. Very, very, very tough for him. Realistically, he is home tonight. He was home watching the Cup race with Rick Hendrick, from Las Vegas today, which cool that they're hanging out. I think Rick's pissed. I can guarantee you Rick was giving him crap the entire race. There's no way he wasn't. But honestly, I think Chase is done. Like, looking at it, like, realistically, really, Like maybe after the Chicago Street Course, you have Atlanta, New Hampshire, Pocono, Richmond, Michigan, Indianapolis Road Course. That one's going to be really tough. It's going to be tough. What if racing in the chat? A heal of that wound would take 3 to 6 months at least. He's en route to pulling a Kyle in 2015. Yeah, June, Robert in the chat as well. June for that injury is being very generous. I agree, 100%. That's extremely generous. I mean, oh boy, it's tough. Gary in the chat. I broke my tibia and fibia and when I did, it was 3 months before I could put any weight on my foot. Yeah, that is at minimum 3 months. But realistically, 6 months. So realistically, sincerely, he'll be lucky if he's back for the playoffs. I mean, seriously, that'll put him back sometime around early September, late, August. And even then, I mean, do you want to come back for just the playoffs if you push yourself? I wouldn't. I think that's way pushing it. That's way, putting yourself in a bad position. I'm a little bit hoarse because we had our season opener out at Orange Show Speedway last night, and we had some oh crap moments, let's just say. But nevertheless, I want to know, what did you guys think about Chase Elliott? Do you guys think he'll realistically come back before the playoffs? And here's the thing. Realistically, where's Chase going to be able to pick up a victory and make the postseason? I mean, he finished second out at Auto Club. Maybe that's the moment where he could have done something, but he didn't have the car. Clearly, Kyle Busch had the car at Auto Club last weekend. He was nowhere in contention to win the 500. So, I mean, where does Chase Elliott pick up a victory, realistically? I mean, looking at his stats, you can argue for this, that, or the other, but, realistically, Atlanta in early July is probably the best case scenario for him getting a victory, and that's basically a restrictor plate race. So and even then it doesn't seem feasible. He's gonna realistically need at least 2 or 3 weeks to get accustomed to the car, to get back into the swing of things. And here's the thing, he's firing on all cylinders right now, or at least he was before this injury. It's gonna take him a few weeks to get really back into the swing of things with his team, for his team to catch up. It's just, it makes no sense. It's not a good scenario. What if, in the chat, imagine he comes back at Daytona and wins and makes the playoff after only doing 3 races? That is going to be next level ridiculous if that's the case. And honestly, that's kind of where we are. That's kind of where we're going. I don't like the fact that Kyle Busch missed a good chunk of 2015 and then went on to win the championship that year. That made no sense to me. That shouldn't be the case. And NASCAR kind of went, because what does that actually say about your race? What does that say about your series? Oh, yeah, no, you must start every single race unless we give you a waiver. And Chase injured himself snowboarding. NASCAR still has to approve that waiver. They haven't yet, but they haven't not approved it yet either. So that's still a big what if. But what if honestly, if he wins Daytona and has 3 races on his belt and is in the postseason with 3 whole races, do you think he's going to win? You think he's going to have a chance? Hell no, he's done for the year. If I were Chase Elliott and Napa and Hendrick Motorsports, I sincerely would just seriously put Barry in the car full time, or whomever you're going to put in that car, and really, really, really go find somebody. Barry was kind of the 11th hour choice, but you got to go out and you got to find somebody who you think can legitimately win a race for you. No offense to Josh Berry, you can't. I mean, it can't. I'm not giving him crap here. I'm just being realistic about it. But looking through the Xfinity series real quick, I mean, who realistically could? You have, in the one, you have Sam Mayer. Maybe he could do better. I don't know. You could go pilfer somebody else from another team. Sheldon Creed, maybe. I doubt it. Doubt they're going to go get him. Realistically, we're looking at the junior motorsports drivers. Justin Allgaier. I think he's earned another shot at the Cup Series, frankly. But I mean, he's the guy who makes the Final Four in the Xfinity Series year after year after year, and he's the Elliott Sadler, where he's going to just be the bridesmaid in the championship in the Xfinity Series. I don't know if I'll necessarily see Allgaier going into a Hendrick Chevy anytime soon. Josh Berry in the 8 obviously took over the car. Brandon Jones, I think he's a guy who seriously needs a little bit more time to develop in the Xfinity Series. Robert in the chat, maybe Michigan. Michigan? Maybe. But I mean, I don't know. Like, to me, there's no good options here. There's no track where it's like, yes, that is a Chase Elliott guaranteed win. Seriously. And if you're putting all your eggs in the Daytona basket, oh my gosh, are you desperate? Because I don't think you can ever go into a plate race, a restrictor plate race, a super speedway race, whatever you want to call it, and think, yes, that's the opportunity. Yes, that's where we will win. Because that's just bad. It's just bad. But, I mean, the All-Star race is honestly, seriously, very generous on May 24th for a return date. Even then, I don't know. That just seems very... I mean, I don't know. I really don't. I'm looking through the list right now. Nashville, Chicago Street Course is going to be tough on him. Atlanta, one hard hit there. He could seriously... When you fracture a bone, it takes so long for it to actually fully heal. So long. And one more hard hit at a plate track, just a hard hit in general, at even a short track, could re-break that leg, and he could be done for all of this season and next season if he returns too early. So you have to look at it this way. If you're a Chase Elliott fan, he's done for the season. Seriously, tell yourself that. Lower your expectations. Tell yourself he's done for the season. He's not making the postseason. He's not going to compete for a championship this year. That's for damn certain. He's not Kyle Busch, period. It's just not a good idea. Robert in the chat, maybe this is a hot take, but Matt DiBenedetto in the 9, experienced Cup driver. Why? That is a hot take. But that's a hot, steaming turd of a take, Robert. Seriously. I mean, Matt DiBenedetto? Huh? He was in really good equipment in the Cup Series when, frankly, it was easier to drive these cars, and the guy couldn't get it done. Could not get it done on the track, and he had all the resources of a Hendrick Motorsports in the world. Why the hell would Rick Hendrick call Matt DiBenedetto, of all people, to jump into the Cup car? That will never happen. I'm calling it now. Matt DiBenedetto will never, ever race in the Cup Series again. Seriously, the only scenario I see Matt DiBenedetto competing in the Cup car again is if a driver gets sick mid-race and there's literally no other Cup drivers at the track. Period. I wouldn't, but if you're desperate as hell, honestly, just keep Josh Berry in the car, because Berry finished 2 laps down today, but even he's going to give you a better shot at actually competing. Josh Berry 2 laps down, 29th on the field today. Rick Hendrick would rather have that. And frankly, Berry's under contract, and I believe there is a stipulation in his contract that says if we need you for a Cup race, you fill in pro bono, which means the cheaper option is to put Berry in the car, literally. And even then, it's... You know, if I'm Rick Hendrick, realistically, I'm honestly trying to think. If I'm Rick Hendrick, who do I put in that car? I got me, seriously. I'm trying to think. Maybe you call Mark Martin again. No, I even then, you know, if you're going for experience, a guy who's going to get you a semi-clean race, who's going to finish the race, Allgaier. But even then, I mean, they're really regretting letting Noah Gragson go now, because he would have been perfect. But even then, oh boy. So Berry probably will take over that car this season, but Berry is trying to race for a championship in the Xfinity Series right now. I wouldn't put Brandon Jones in. I don't think he's got the you know, really experience yet. I mean, looking through the rest of the Xfinity Series, Ryan Truex is racing some races at Joe Gibbs Racing in a Toyota. That might be one route. Austin Hill is over at RCR. That might be an option, but even Austin doesn't seem like a great idea. Um, yeah, I'm going through the Xfinity kind of list right now, and I'm looking like no, 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 no. Like you just look in house at Chevys. There's really not a whole lot of options right now. There really isn't like good options. The Xfinity series just kind of saw a turnover of um, frankly cars that need um, you know all of the guys who were like the prospects in the Xfinity series jumped up into the Cup series. The guys who were quote unquote ready, and even then, Corvette Racing in the chat. The 9 should be split between Mayor Barry and Jimmy Johnson. Actually, Jimmy Johnson is not a bad idea. Corvette Racing, that's a really good idea. If I'm Rick Hendrick, I'm calling Jimmy right now, buddy. I know you got some stuff going on over there, but please, 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 please. Robert in the chat, Daniel Hamrick. Meh, not a bad idea, not a great idea. I like the Jimmy Johnson idea better. Call Jimmy Johnson. Yeah, I'm with Corvette Racing. Call Jimmy Johnson, call Jimmy Johnson, call Jimmy Johnson. I'm putting a 7-time champ in that car because he proved at Daytona he's got actually a really good chance at running at least on the lead lap, which is what you have to do for Napa. And Napa's going to be involved. Napa and all of Chase's sponsors are going to be involved. And honestly, Jimmy, owns his own team, and that's an interesting situation over there right now, but I'd rather call somebody else in. I'd rather call Jimmy Johnson than anybody else. I would take Jimmy Johnson over Matt DiBenedetto any day of the week. I'm going to throw another name out there because he's going, I think he's full-time, or at least part-time. I'm trying to remember what he's doing over there in the Xfinity Series, but Anthony Alfredo has Cup experience. Kind of actually brings his own money with Dude Wipes and some other sponsors. Yeah, he's over at BJ's team, but honestly, Anthony might not be bad. Like, it's not great, but it's an okay option. Like, you need an okay option at this point. If you can't get Jimmy Johnson for some races, Anthony Alfredo full-time in the 9 car this season might be the way to go, because Anthony's going to give up his chance to race, in a BJ McLeod car in the Xfinity Series to race a Hendrick Motorsports Chevy in the Cup Series. Yeah. If I'm Anthony Alfredo, I'm calling Rick Hendrick right now going, Mr. Hendrick, can I do it? Like, if I'm Anthony Alfredo, sincerely, I'm driving that car for minimum wage. Seriously. Anthony definitely is a driver who hasn't made, his fortune in racing yet. He definitely needs to get paid something, but like, that's a cheap option that's not bad, because if you're realistically looking to put somebody in that 9 car full time, which is what you really have to plan on right now, that's not bad. Robert in the chat, there are no really great options. Sucky situation for sure. Absolutely. Rick Hendrick Motorsports doesn't really have a pipeline of drivers that I think are ready for the Cup Series, but in all likelihood, more than likely, they'll take their junior motorsports drivers, probably Barry realistically, for the full season, and he'll just double duty this thing, similar to what Noah Gragson did towards the end of last year. Parker Kligerman, Robert in the chat. Maybe. Like, that's not bad, but same thing. It's not great either. It's an option. It definitely is an option. I mean, I'm seriously looking and thinking, like, if you have to pick somebody to say you're going to run for a championship, you don't have other commitments, don't really have anybody. I mean, not really. I mean, I think that, yeah, you have Anthony Alfredo, who's full-time right now in the Xfinity Series. That's an option. I think Jimmy Johnson's probably your best bet at this point. And even then, like, that's not the situation you want, but that's unfortunately the situation that you're in. So it's a very sticky situation. But let's talk about what happened out at the Cup race today. Hendrick Motorsports clearly firing on all cylinders in the Cup Series right now. There is no question about it. William Byron had the car to beat today. My gosh. He led 176 laps of the 271. I mean, the guy dominated, and I know we hate it when the dominant car wins. It makes for a kind of boring race, and it was. It was not, and to determine whether or not it was a boring race, we have to determine what makes a good race. To me, what makes a good race are comers and goers. We had that in stage one, then some, and we saw some of that in stage two. You have to have multi-groove racing. We saw that out at Las Vegas. We always see that out at Las Vegas. You need to have a tight field. Honestly, I mean, 19 cars on the lead lap. I mean, it kind of was tight. We only saw 2 cautions in the first half of this race at the end of the stages. I definitely think this is an example of what could happen if you eliminate stage cautions, because had we not done that, you would have had probably 10 cars on the lead lap with how quick Byron was right there at the first part of the race and how fast he was all day. The only time when we really actually saw, you know, a real issue, and when we saw, the actual caution fly was at in the final stage on lap 182 when the 22 spun coming off at turn 4 when they were 4 wide. We also saw, obviously, the 10 car that brought out that green-white checker right there at the very end. So realistically, you had 2 cautions all race long, and I never would have thought that Joey Logano whacking the wall would have caused him to end his day like it did right there, but it did. It blew me away that that was the case, but that's what we had. That's where we were, which was just very fascinating to me that that's what it was. By the way, make sure that you check out W.GG. There is no sugar, no calories, no fillers, and no fake sugars in this energy drink. W.GG. You can use promo code ALLEN10 at checkout for 10% off. And it really helps the channel out a lot. They're a small company out of San Diego, not too far from where I am, American made, and they're expanding. They have a lot more flavors that are coming out. They have delicious flavors like Beach and Peach, Dragonade, Dub Sludge, Monkey Madness, and my personal favorite, the Galaxy Grenade, which is a wonderful watermelon lime flavor. I absolutely loved it. Robert in the chat, it definitely wasn't a boring race. It was a more solid, fast-moving race. Absolutely. I mean, the time of the race was 2 hours, 50 minutes. That's the sweet spot. I love a race that was this quick. I really do. TV definitely needs these races to be under 3 hours. I'd go as so far as saying I think Cup races should be under 2 hours. Seriously. From a TV standpoint, a 2-hour race would be better. From a fan standpoint, under 2 hours would be better, period. That definitely leads the credence to 2.5-hour shows for TV, which TV would love. But I think that it is time to put a time limit on these races and to back it down. I don't think that we need to, have necessarily the Pennzoil 400 anymore. I think that, the Las Vegas Grand Prix is more accurate. And I know I'm going to piss off a lot of people with that IndyCar, with that F1 talk, but I think that that's where we need to be. You look at F1, it's exploded. It is by far more popular than NASCAR right now globally, and if that's what NASCAR wants to do, they need to start making some changes. And NASCAR knows this. I've talked to NASCAR privately about these things, and there definitely was a more interesting conversation that we have that I will tell you about when I'm able to. Robert in the chat, the Xfinity race racing in terms of racing and time-wise was perfect. I didn't get a chance to watch the Xfinity race live. I was at Orange Show Speedway in San Bernardino, and we had our opening night out there, so I got a chance to watch some of that on the back end, which, honestly, it was a good race. Timing-wise, I'll take your word for it. Thank you for the subscription, by the way, but I'll take your word for that because I didn't get a chance to watch it live, which sucks, but it is what it is. To me, you need to have shorter races. Like, I'm going to keep beating that drum. I don't think there needs to be any 500-mile races other than the Daytona 500 and the Coke 600. Those are the only 2 long races. I think that 400 is borderline too long. I'd like to see 300-mile races for the Cup Series. I think that that might actually produce some better racing and some better just the possibility of more ratings. And we saw a ratings dip last week, and we saw a ratings dip in the 500. Ratings are down this year, period. Yes. The 500 definitely had a. It was the number one that weekend. But when you have other events, other sporting events that are kind of eclipsing the Cup Series, oh boy. And this is going to be the real test, this race, because the race wasn't exciting by the casual fan's definition, because exciting for the casual fan means cautions, means crashes, means tight racing and multi cautions throughout the first few stages, and we didn't see that. So I think it's definitely not something that the casual fan's going to enjoy. Us hardcore fans, we absolutely loved it because you saw the comers and goers early. You saw that in the first two stages. But it definitely didn't produce the, really, dramatic moments early on. We didn't even see those dramatic moments late in this race. On that green-white checker, we saw one, but even that was, new tires versus no tires, obviously what was happening. The length of the race was 2 hours, 10 minutes. For the Xfinity race, I believe that is accurate. The time of the race today was 2 hours, 50 minutes for the NASCAR Cup race per NASCAR. I'm looking at NASCAR right now on their sheet, and that's the time. The average speed was 140 miles per hour in this race. So, I mean, I'm looking at all the stats right now. It's just, it's, I don't know. To me, this was a good race. I feel like it. I feel like we saw some good racing out there. But I'll tell you this, Ford is in deep trouble. Deep, deep, deep trouble. They need to start working on this package now if I'm Ford. If I'm Ford, I'm sweating bullets. Because looking at it, their highest finishing Ford was Austin Cindric, who finished sixth. He ran his fastest lap of the race on lap 224 of the 271. Everybody else was running their fastest laps of the race around the midway point of the race. Bubba Wallace also hit on something late in this race too. 226 of the 171 is when he ran his fastest lap. Everybody else ran their fast laps early on in the race, let's just say. Even Ross Chastain, who faded right there throughout the race, he definitely did not keep up with the racetrack because Ross Chastain's fast lap came on lap 3, and everybody else, somewhere around the midway point of this race, so or the latter part of this race. So Chastain struggled. You see the 99, his teammate Daniel Suarez coming home with a top 10 finish, not too shabby. But I mean, looking at the finishing order, the Fords were struggling, man. And I think that you really have a strong case that 2311 is starting to eclipse Joe Gibbs Racing as the number one Toyota team, because you have Bubba Wallace, who finished fourth, pretty darn good. Nobody was going to touch those Hendrick Chevys today, but Bubba was there. He was right there at the very end and came home fourth. Really respectable race. The 45 at 2311, Tyler Reddick, he hit the wall a couple of times and really messed his car up, but he limped it home 15th. Pretty darn respectable. You had Christopher Bell in the 20 car coming home 5th. You had MTJ with no tires and 40 plus laps on your car on those tires. Why wouldn't you come and get at least 2? And I get it. It's them. It's frankly MTJ being desperate. Like, you're seeing that desperation out of the Toyota camp right there, because it's worth a shot, but no tires clearly wasn't the winning move. He faded to 7th on that green-white checker restart. Denny Hamlin coming home 11th. 2 tires worked out for him. He took 2 tires around the midway point, at the later part of this race in stage 3, and he was up there in the top 5, and ultimately he faded right there at the end. His Toyota just didn't have the power right there, didn't have the speed in it. Ty Gibbs, a lap down in 22nd. That's where they put their money. That's where Joe Gibbs Racing decided, yes, this is what we're going to do, which was super interesting, honestly. I did not expect them to do that, but this is where we were. I was kind of blown away by it, if I'm being honest. Robert in the chat, I don't mind the call from the 19. Clean air meant everything today. Yeah, it did, but again, we saw that run right there at the very end. That they were getting. It just wasn't good. And here's what the first 20 laps looked like for Ty Gibbs. He did start 4th. Good for him for having one good lap. But then by lap 5, he lost 4 spots, fell to 8th. By lap 10, lost 10 spots, fell to 14th. By lap 15, fell to 19th. By lap 20, 22nd. That's the definition of only working on qualifying. I would rather start in the back and work my way forward every single weekend than honestly have a good qualifying effort and then fade, and that's exactly what Ty Gibbs is, what he was. I don't know. Let's talk about something that happened on the Fox broadcast early on that really blew me away. Why did Boyer over the radio interview Justin Marks while Marks was on a pit box during green flag racing? They have reporters on pit road. They have producers on pit road. Why not just put a headset on Justin Marks and hand him a microphone and send a camera down there and do it live? Why do it on the radio? Like, some people said it was cool. I thought it was really stupid because you're doing it over the radio under green in the ear of the driver when the driver's trying to concentrate. Huh? Like, it was so weird. That was so weird. I thought that was the stupidest thing ever. I don't care. Like, that was really bad. Robert, I see now on Twitter, you said you thought it was kind of cool. Yeah, I kind of cool a little bit, but just stupid when you think about all these other aspects of it. Just really, really, really strange. And if you want further credence that Joe Gibbs Racing is really pushing Ty Gibbs, penalty on the first pit stop for too many crew members over the wall. Literally, they're sending too many guys out to help fix that car. Yeah, that's good times. But Chase Elliott did tweet out, in all seriousness, the support I've received over the last couple of days is far greater than I deserve. I want to thank everybody who has leaned over in any form. Let's give Josh Berry and the Napa Racing team some love today. Yeah, it didn't exactly go great for them, Chase. I thought it was interesting that Chase went kind of radio silent on social media. And then the very first thing he tweeted out this morning about 5 hours ago was, "It has come to my attention that the formal request I submitted for a slight edit to the March selection of my script was indeed declined." Which I think is just funny because he's trolling. I think it's great that he's trolling so blatantly like that. Like, that was hilarious to me, honestly. I thought that was very good. But even that, I thought that was kind of funny. And I said it, on the I said it on Twitter over the weekend that Kyle's hardest race was the Xfinity race because Colic Racing has been a little off, period. Robert on Twitter, the timing of that threw me off. I didn't expect it, especially under green, referring to the interview with Marks and Boyer. Yeah, Robert, I agree. That was very, 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 very odd. That they did that under green. I thought it was great that they cut off Danica Patrick coming back from commercial to go to a pre-taped segment that was recorded earlier on in the week. That was something that had nothing to do with nothing. It was a Toyota sponsor read, obviously, that had nothing to do with anything that was happening on the racetrack. It was literally them going, let's get this pre-recorded thing out of the way. I feel like they were supposed to do that during the pre-race, and they forgot to, so they cut off Danica Patrick, who was talking about something Mike Joy did, and went to a pre-produced piece that was talking about airflow in the car. Nobody had complained or said anything. It was early on in the race. There was nothing happening at that time. But let's go ahead and throw to this Toyota segment and cut off Danica Patrick. And let's talk about Danica Patrick for a second. What did you guys think about her in the booth? We've obviously talked in length about how Mike Joy is clearly off his game. He's in the decline of his career, and realistically, he needs to hang it up sooner rather than later, because at this point, like Jimmy Johnson did at one point, like Richard Petty, actually Richard Petty's a better example. Richard Petty didn't win a race for the last 10 years of his career, give or take, and yet he was still out there ruining his legacy. Personally, I'm always going to think about Richard Petty as the guy who was always a lap down, was always causing the caution, was always the wreckfest that he was. I don't consider him to be the king. I don't even consider him to be good in NASCAR. Yeah, I said it. King Richard is not King Richard to me, period. Mostly because at Richard's quote-unquote peak of his career or his prime, he had other guys who were beating him regularly on the racetrack. The only time Richard was really good is when we had, 100 plus races a year, and we were racing like, 7 times per week, and he would show up to local short tracks, win a race that not that many cars showed up for, and he would go out there with the money that he had and the equipment that he had and spank guys that were frankly in their family station wagon. I mean, it's like Kyle Busch going down to the yeah, it's kind of like how in the early 2000s we had Cup drivers jumping into the Xfinity Series with their Cup programs and spanking them all. Not really a fair fight. That's kind of what it was. But um, back to my point that I think that Mike Joy is doing what Richard Petty did in his career. He definitely is off right now. Bowyer is so all over the place and so low energy. Bowyer doesn't even care, it seems like, most of the time, or he's angry, because whenever Bowyer shows a little bit of his personality, he seems to be cut off by somebody, or he steps on Mike or steps on something else that's happening. So Bowyer seems to be a little annoyed, which I think is funny. But I just don't like the Fox booth right now. I don't like the Fox broadcast right now. Robert in the chat, she was much better than last year. Mike Bowyer and Joy kept cutting her off, which was annoying. Yeah, but in frankly Bowyer and Joy's defense, they had other things that they were talking about. And even you had her saying incorrect things. She did this last year where she was saying a lot of incorrect things that were inaccurate statements or asking questions that she is supposed to know the answer to but didn't. Danica definitely didn't do her homework last year, and I feel like she didn't do her homework this year. Danica's been away from NASCAR for a few years, and I think she is very underqualified to actually call a race. I feel like I'm more qualified to call a NASCAR Cup race as an analyst than she is. Even as somebody who hasn't driven a Cup car, I feel like at this point I know more than she does. Seriously. Bowyer definitely knows more, but I would honestly like to see, frankly, 3 completely different people in the Fox booth next season. I'd like to see anybody else in that Fox booth right now. Obviously, you have Kevin Harvick who's jumping into the Fox booth next season. I think that's a good move. I think you need a new lead anchor. I think you need a new number 2, because I don't think anybody's going to work well with Clint Bowyer. I think Bowyer needs to be a Michael Waltrip type personality for the Fox broadcast. Put him on a pit box doing the pre, mid, and post-race stuff. That's where Bowyer will strive, not during the race. Joy might actually be good in the booth as the lead announcer if he's got people he can trust and if the chemistry's there. The chemistry is not there right now. You can't bring in a different analyst every single race and hope, keyword hope, that things will work out. No, you need to let them do their jobs. You look at what NBC did. Literally, when Dale Jr. and Jeff Burton got together, and when they started doing the NBC broadcasts, they stuck them in a room, and they literally watched the races together and did a mock commentary on the Fox broadcasts with no sound. And they worked their chemistry out off camera, off mic, off of television for months. And then when they actually started their actual broadcast, they sounded like they had been doing it for a little while. It was rough around the edges, but the chemistry was significantly better. You can't, if you're Fox, you can't keep cutting costs here, and you can't keep putting in a different analyst every race. Pick one, literally. You've got Larry McReynolds right there. How hard is it to put Larry Mack in that booth with Bowyer and Joy right now? It's not. But yet we're going to do this, switching a different analyst every single race, and every single race it's going to be a crapshoot, and it's garbage. It is one of the most unprofessional broadcasts ever. I've seen college broadcasts, high school broadcasts that are better produced and better commentated on than what we get out of Fox these days. It's absolutely ridiculous, and I hate that we're subjugated to it, period. I absolutely hate it. But Fox, honestly, doesn't care, because you're talking about it. We're talking about it. And it's going to be something that continues to make headlines. So they're getting the press. They don't care. And, I mean, it's Fox. I mean, they have bigger issues happening with their overall business strategy right now, and they're okay with all of those legal issues that they're in. Do you think they care about the NASCAR broadcast right now, or that it's even a blip on their radar? No. So I absolutely hate it, but this is the reality that we're in, unfortunately. So we all just unfortunately have to deal with it at this point. Um, but looking at the Cup finish, I mean, William Byron had the piece today. Who is going to be a contender for this championship? I think we can't really make that call and that assessment until after next week. We're heading out to Phoenix next week. What does the short track, flat track program look like for some of these guys? The LA Clash, I don't feel like counts because the package that we ran there is not the package we're going to see out at Phoenix this weekend. We did find out from NASCAR that they do have a new short track package that they're going to be running. Is it necessarily the winning package? Is it the thing that, is going to solve all of the short track problems? I don't know. They made this change for road courses, many tracks 1 mile or less, which is what needed to be done. But the adjustments that were tested at Phoenix in late January and confirmed mid-February in a wind tunnel test include a 2-inch spoiler from the current 4-inch spoiler, a removal of 3 diffuser stakes, and the engine panel stake. The changes expect to reduce at least 30% reduction in downforce. Cool. Is this going to solve that problem? I don't know. Nobody kind of does. The drivers were saying this is a step in the right direction, but I feel like you're taking one step forward towards this ultimate goal when you need to be taking 5 or 10 steps forward. Ultimately, we won't know until we see the racing on track next Sunday. So 1 week from tonight, when we talk about what happened at Phoenix, that's when things will get interesting. That's where we'll actually see a lot of these changes come into fruition. Looking across motorsports real quick, Marcus Ericsson did win a wild IndyCar opener. We had multiple cars airborne on the streets of St. Petersburg. Never thought I'd say that sentence out loud, but that's where we are. Verstappen picked up exactly where he has been the last 2 years. Turns out when you go a few $1 million over budget on shrimp and catering, you will win a lot of races. So Verstappen led a 1-2 Bahrain podium. Fernando Alonso, though, very cool. Leclerc, unfortunately, wants answers from Ferrari after his engine blew. Go figure. I mean, what do you expect, bud? But Aston Martin showing up, man, beating Ferrari and Mercedes out there, which was pretty darn cool. And very stoutly, by the way, 10 seconds up on the Ferrari Carlos Sainz, who was 4th, and Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes 5th. So not too shabby for them. Tomac getting his victory out at the Daytona Supercross. Oh, by the way, Supercross is still a thing. That is still going to continue to be a thing, unfortunately, throughout the season. I know a lot of people kind of have Supercross fall off a cliff this time of the year because other forms of motorsports are happening. Austin Hill did pick up the Xfinity Series victory in Vegas on a very wild finish out there. Very cool that he was able to get his second win of the season. I know a lot of people were mad about Daytona, but I mean, the guy clearly is going to be a championship favorite. 2 wins in 3 races. Amazing. Kyle Busch did pick up his first victory in the Truck Series in a Chevy. And the fact that he had Billy Baloo, a logo on that car, it just made me go, what year is this? This is crazy. But feels cool that Kyle Busch picks up the first KBM truck win in a Chevy at his home track. A very cool story, y'all. Very cool. Michael Conti did get the eNASCAR Series win earlier this week at Milwaukee. Their debut at Milwaukee. It's Michael Conti. I mean, Michael Conti, come on. I mean, he's effectively the Jimmy Johnson of the eNASCAR Series. Like, essentially. Like I said, NASCAR made those announcements for the road courses in the adjustments. We found out that some of the crew members from the number 19 were suspended because of the actions out there at Auto Club. We knew that. We found out that Marco Andretti returning to defend his SRX title, and that Ryan Hunter-Reay is also going full-time in 2023 in the SRX. Pretty darn cool. I actually really dug that move. The SRX is finally starting to come together. A lot of people last season and the season before that were saying, well, this is kind of like the retired NASCAR driver club. But honestly, Yeah, you have a lot of retired guys who retired from full time racing, but it's not the geriatric club that it has been. You have younger talent in there, and frankly, you have superstars now, much bigger superstars. So this is a absolute step in the right direction. I think it's awesome. Can't wait to see what the SRX series looks like later this summer. It should be pretty stout, pretty good. We just have to wait and see what it ultimately looks like. But ultimately, good weekend of racing, man. I mean, we got F1 back, IndyCar came back, NHRA comes back next week. You do have Super Motocross who's continuing their roll into their season, so there's a lot of interesting racing that is happening right here, right now. Next week, NASCAR heading out to Phoenix. That should be a that's going to be a very telling time, honestly, very telling time. Robert in the chat, I hope ESPN does good with those SRX broadcasts. They will. I honestly think they will. And honestly, that's going to be interesting to see if ESPN tries to get the rights for NASCAR back for their broadcasts, but I don't think so. ESPN's pretty happy with F1, and honestly, from a business standpoint, F1's making you more money. Yeah, you need to stick with F1. NASCAR's fine. It's a good feather in their cap, but ESPN has exactly what they want, and I don't see them wanting to change that anytime soon. Let's just say. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this plays out. But I do want to thank you guys for coming on out and for hanging on out. I know this has been an interesting show simply because we don't have the highlights like we usually have. We had an issue with YouTube that took down the stream early on in the stream, and we completed the stream and didn't know about it until after the stream. So kind of a second live out here tonight. Very interesting night, man. That's all I can really say. But hopefully the issues are fixed. No more YouTube issues. Hopefully. We'll have to wait and see. But I did want to thank you all so much for watching. And if you haven't, go back and watch the post-race show from Auto Club last week, episode 159, because we had an amazing group of guests on that show. I froze my butt off on the roof. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, like, you might as well watch me go try to not freeze. But it was very fun. It was very cool. I wish it wasn't so late. I wish that we could have talked about the final race at Auto Club during normal hours and not at 11 o'clock at night Eastern, but that's what the case was, unfortunately. So I still had a whole lot of fun with that broadcast. I really did. So hopefully you guys go check that one out in due time and have some fun with it. But want to thank you all so much for watching. If you haven't, Dubby.gg, promo code Allen10 at checkout. It really helps us out a lot. You can also check out AmericanRacingNetwork.com for the latest motorsports news. ARN, the Motorsports Authority. I want to thank you all so much for watching for Shifting Gears live on Sunday, March 5th, 2023. I'm Alan Bailey. We will see y'all at the track. Bye, Gearheads.